You all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't.
What happens when Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly join forces for a roast, and Jimmy Kimmel ends up the unlucky target? Spoiler alert. It's less late-night laughs and more like career CPR via verbal defibrillator. From ego-crushing zingers to searing truth bombs, this roast quickly turns into a 3-alarm fire, and Kimmel's the marshmallow. Buckle up, this isn't your average celebrity feud. It's a verbal demolition derby, and Jimmy forgot his helmet. So what did he say to set them off? Stick around. It's messier than a Twitter meltdown.
All of a sudden, the ideology shifts because so many people are compromised by this very thing that we were talking about before. The very thing that they use to control the media in terms of the news, they use it to control the media in terms of late-night talk shows and monologues as well. It's the same influence because they're the same sponsors. The same people are spending the same money on the same networks. And it has an impact. If it affects your livelihood and affects your future and your ability to do this thing that you love doing, which is hosting a talk show, and you're doing it on a network that is paid for by that money, guess what? That affects you.
Once upon a time in the kingdom of late-night TV and carefully crafted sincerity, Jimmy Kimmel reigned as the jester-in-chief, the guy who once thrived on beer-chugging bits and bikini bounce houses. Fast forward to today, and he's morphed into Hollywood's unofficial Dalai Lama, clutching pearls over moral crises with the same hands that used to high-five bros over fart jokes. What changed? Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly have some theories, and they didn't exactly whisper them into the void.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah. Now, if you are of the left, that's fine. If you are of the right and happen to just say, hey, people used to wear blackface and nobody freaked out about it.
First up, enter Joe Rogan, MMA commentator, podcasting juggernaut, and full-time human bulldozer of sugar-coated nonsense. Rogan doesn't tiptoe into critiques. He charges in like a caffeine-fueled rhino with a vendetta against phoniness. And to Joe, Kimmel isn't just a late-night host. He's an artifact, a relic from a time when comedy meant something more than holding up cue cards of virtue.
That sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
Rogan's take isn't rooted in personal beef. It's more of a spiritual offense. When you build a career as the everyman, the guy who says what others won't, watching someone like Kimmel morph into Hollywood's moral concierge feels like betrayal. It's like finding out your favorite dive bar now serves gluten-free kale shots with motivational quotes. It's disorienting, with a laugh track. Kimmel's evolution, or devolution, depending on your seat, plays out like a satire sketch that forgot it wasn't supposed to be real.
You know, the Elon Musk joking around about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole. Which is pretty funny. But then...
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it too.
The man who once rode the comedy line like a rodeo bull now clutches a golden moral compass that, conveniently, always points toward applause. Rogan, ever the bloodhound for authenticity, smells the rebrand from a mile away. This isn't just a pivot, it's a full-blown career Botox injection. And nothing screams, "I'm still edgy," like recycling tired political sermons wedged between HR-approved jokes. In Rogan's world, messy, chaotic, occasionally unhinged but always brutally real, people clash, debate, and move on without moral meltdowns. Kimmel, meanwhile, seems wrapped in the comforter of Hollywood consensus, a man who traded his comedic soul for Instagram clout. Once unpredictable, now utterly beige. It's like watching a 90s punk rocker shill for Whole Foods. Sure, he still cracks jokes, but now they arrive with disclaimers and trigger warnings. What once hit like a punch now reads like a corporate memo. And then there's the late-night ecosystem itself. Sanitized, bleached, and algorithm-approved. Rogan sees a sea of clones. Same jokes, same politics, same toothless punchlines. Late night has become a daycare for ideologues with cue cards. And Kimmel, unfortunately, is the head babysitter.
At the Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface loving Kimmel. They, at the same time, fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on, The Bachelorette for saying, gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it. And all he said was, are we judging her by today's standards, or are we judging her by, old standards, whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past without ever acknowledging.
Cue the transition music, because now gliding in with surgical precision comes Megyn Kelly. If Rogan's critiques land like a sledgehammer, Kelly's are more like an autopsy. Clinical, calculated, and absolutely unflinching. She doesn't need stand-up specials or bro-code banter. She wields a scalpel labeled media hypocrisy, and Kimmel is her prime cadaver. Where Rogan sees a fallen comic, Kelly sees a media puppet. Not a clown, but a well-dressed sock, mouthing the lines of an industry that only pretends to care when the metrics align. In her view, Kimmel's transformation isn't growth, it's strategy. He didn't evolve, he pivoted, spotted the winds of political virtue, and duct-taped a sail to his designer suit. Kelly has no patience for performative empathy, especially when it's wrapped around a conveniently forgotten past. Kimmel, once the king of crude, now plays Hollywood's moral sheriff, but only when it's safe. Funny how redemption arcs always seem to coincide with contract renewals, almost like they're scheduled. Kelly peels back the illusion. Kimmel preaches from a pedestal built on the very behavior he now condemns, and Hollywood applauds. Not out of belief, but because he's useful.
Yes, hypocrisy is alive and well amongst these sanctimonious leftists. From Kimmel to De Niro to Stephanopoulos, they want you to believe they're better than you. More virtuous, more decent. But we all know the truth. They lie. They sin. They do the very things they accuse you of, and the things they say they would never do. Evil things. Like try to destroy people based on feigned outrage from which they spare their own side.
The media loves a redemption story, as long as the redeemed join the choir. And Jimmy, he's practically the lead soprano. But here's where it gets delicious. While Kelly dissects the PR playbook and publicist-polished apologies, she also exposes the real incentive structure. Kimmel doesn't get a pass because he's sorry. He gets it because he switched sides. This isn't about morality. It's about market alignment. Morals are optional. Loyalty to the narrative? Mandatory. What makes this even more striking is that two vastly different critiques have converged on the same man. Rogan calls out the plastic shell where a comedian once stood. Kelly spotlights the empty suit reading from the media's teleprompter. And they're both painfully accurate in their own ways. Rogan sees a once authentic voice smothered by studio gloss and applause addiction. Kelly sees a strategic chameleon. shape-shifting just enough to survive each outrage cycle. Together, they make the unlikeliest tag team in cultural commentary. One swinging a bat, the other filing a forensic report. The only thing missing is popcorn. Because at this point, the issue isn't even the comedy itself. It's the fact that it doesn't even try. Kimmel, who once pushed boundaries, now babysits them. His monologues don't deliver punchlines. They deliver proof that he did his ideological homework.
They were saying that his tweet is transphobic.
Do you think in that case, do you think that's him or a writer? Can't you tell?
Jimmy Kimmel? No, it's him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host The Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, for hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke.
But viewers didn't tune in to be graded. They tuned in to laugh. Somewhere along the way, the jokes morphed into sermons, and the punchlines began to resemble TED Talks with applause signs. That's where Rogan and Kelly strike gold. They expose the absurdity of it all. A guy who once stood for irreverence now champions scripted outrage. A comedian who used to skewer hypocrisy now calendars it. There's no rebellion left, just rebranding. And in the great irony of modern media, the more Kimmel moralizes, the more hollow it sounds. Not because morality is wrong, but because it's so obviously manufactured. Every teary monologue, every carefully packaged outrage, comes tailor-made for viral clips. It's sincerity by committee. So what's the damage? For starters, late-night TV has become such a loud echo chamber, it can't hear itself anymore. Rogan, watching from his leather-padded bunker of chaos, wonders when comedy turned into a PowerPoint presentation. Kelly, sipping espresso in her media war room, watches the same clown car crash on repeat. Kimmel, caught in the middle, says nothing, but he doesn't have to. His silence speaks louder than his monologues. Because at the end of the day, it's not what he says, it's what he's become. A punchline without a setup, a moral compass with a brand deal, a performer in a play no one finds funny anymore.
I will tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV. You plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million, averaging. Also equally horrible.
Rogan and Kelly didn't debate him or even invite him to the roast. They just took one look at the act and called it what it is. A sitcom without a script, a sermon with a laugh track, an empire built on irony now selling sincerity at half price. And here's where it starts to feel like a Netflix documentary titled The Day the Clown Cried for Ratings. Because when Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly both find themselves dragging Jimmy Kimmel through the same mud puddle, one swinging like a blunt force caveman philosopher, the other dissecting him like she's prepping for a high-stakes courtroom trial, you know something deeper is brewing beneath the laugh track. Let's start with a simple but brutal equation. Authenticity versus performance. Joe Rogan's whole shtick is being raw, unfiltered, and occasionally offensive enough to give PR departments heart palpitations. He's never tried to be lovable, and that's the appeal. Kimmel, on the other hand, has turned himself into something resembling a human press release. His once edgy comedic soul is long gone, probably traded it in for a nicer hairpiece and a moral high ground with a scenic view.
They want to shut me down on being on McAfee. They want to shut me up from...
Well, that was the Kimmel thing, right?
No.
Did you ever talk to that dude? Have you ever talked to him?
I've been on the show.
Yeah?
Years ago, yeah.
Would you ever have a conversation with him in person?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, they wanted me to be on the show in the summertime after I got traded.
Really?
There, obviously been some things that he had said about me that made me go, I don't know if I want to do that.
It's like watching a former punk rocker show up at a PTA meeting wearing khakis and passionately debating gluten-free cupcakes. The man who used to lampoon Hollywood is now Hollywood itself, wrapped in branded virtue and sprinkled with whatever the internet finds palatable this week. Rogan's take? Kimmel isn't evolving. He's dissolving into a safe, inoffensive puddle of applause-seeking goo. Then there's Megyn Kelly, who arrives like a corporate HR investigator holding the receipts. She doesn't care that Kimmel used to be funny. She's fascinated by how thoroughly he's been repackaged and resold. To her, it's not personal growth. It's moral Botox. Looks clean, feels fake, and needs touch-ups every few months to stay relevant. Together, Rogan and Kelly don't just critique the man. They expose the system he now thrives in. Which brings us to the lost art of comedy. Remember when comedians actually took risks? When jokes made people uncomfortable, squirm, maybe even rethink their beliefs. Yeah, those were the days. Now comedy's been sedated, neutered, and tossed into a branded merch store where every punchline must be pre-approved by PR and sanitized for your safety.
I've got serious questions about whether any of this is true. I mean, in every job I've ever worked, I've had people who would jump through brick walls for me, and I can be a tough boss. I'm not an asshole, but I'll say, like, that was a shitty packet. Like, we need to do better. That was not okay. And the team, my team loves me and I love my team because we are all about putting out great work product. And I'm quick to compliment too. Like, what did he say? He basically said, are you okay? Seriously, do you need help? That's causing people to lose their hair? People need to toughen up. Your workplace is not your nana's lap.
Rogan sees this and screams into his microphone about it. Kelly notices and raises a chilling eyebrow, but the conclusion is the same. We've traded genuine laughter for claptor, applause not for something funny, but for something ideologically correct. It's comedy turned sermon, with Kimmel playing the self-righteous preacher, reading from the gospel of whatever's trending. And the media. Oh, it's not just enabling this, it's practically begging for more. The safer, more digestible, more elite-approved your content is, the more coverage you get. Kimmel doesn't just survive in this ecosystem. He thrives because he's the model, the prototype, the build-a-late-night host version 2.0. Now with 50% less edge and 100% more moral superiority. So here we stand at what can only be described as a cultural crossroads. On one side, the Rogans and Kellys, flawed but fiercely independent, swinging wildly at the padded walls of the media bubble. On the other, the Kimmels of the world, smiling through rehearsed sincerity and carefully polished monologues, floating on the surface of public approval like a duck in a $4,000 suit. But this isn't just about one man losing his comedic backbone. It's about an entire entertainment industry that's forgotten how to laugh unless it's at pre-approved targets. It's about satire that used to bite, now settling for gentle nibbling, like a tofu piranha.
So I don't think that conversation is a conversation that should be held in front of an audience in 5-minute chunks like they do on television.
Yeah.
That's a conversation that you have to let air out. I want to know why you think the way you think. Him, sit down with Jimmy. Why do you think the way you think? Why would you think that it's okay to say that it's a real simple thing? The people that have been vaccinated, you treat them. And the people that took horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy. Really? Is that really how you feel?
It's about what happens when comedians stop challenging the powerful and start brunching with them instead. Because when comedy forgets who it's supposed to mock, the punchline isn't just weak, it's tragic. Need a visual? Picture this. A clown once known for flipping tables now sits quietly at one, sipping herbal tea and nodding politely as studio execs praise how brave he is. Meanwhile, the crowd isn't laughing. They're clapping desperately, pretending what they just heard was comedy, not confession. So yeah, Rogan swung the hammer, Kelly brought the scalpel. But it wasn't just about Kimmel. They were dissecting the same thing. The artificial, calculated, utterly humorless soul of modern media. The scary part? The punchline landed. The scarier part? It wasn't even funny. Late night used to feel like a bar at 2 a.m. Chaotic, unpredictable, sometimes inappropriate, but always honest. Now it feels like a team-building seminar hosted by someone who used to be fun. And if anyone's wondering where the spark went, Rogan and Kelly just handed you the map. Because when Joe Rogan, the human Molotov cocktail, and Megyn Kelly, the PR assassin, both circle the same target, you don't get an interview. You get an autopsy. And the subject isn't just Kimmel. It's everything he now represents.
Back in the day when I was on the prime time of Fox and you were on the prime time of CNN, a couple of hours after our shows ended, late night comics would come on and they occasionally would make us laugh, Pierce. As you know, they've abandoned that game now and they're just political operatives out there. Look at this.
Hey there. How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate.
Just get over yourselves. Honestly, it's so pathetic.
The culture of fake growth, the illusion of bravery, and echo chambers, the idea that comedy is only okay if it flatters the right people. Rogan and Kelly didn't just humiliate Jimmy Kimmel. They exposed the scaffolding holding up his entire stage. And they didn't do it with rage. They did it with disappointment, sarcasm, and a well-earned side eye. The kind of ridicule that doesn't scream, it smirks. That doesn't need a mic drop because the silence that follows is louder. So the next time Kimmel climbs up onto his moral lifeguard chair to warn America about the dangers of mean tweets, maybe take a moment and ask yourself, are you watching a comedian or a commercial for the newest flavor of Kool-Aid? Because the jokes used to be the point. Now they're just the delivery system for the lecture. And if you're still laughing, Rogan and Kelly have just one question. At what cost? Welcome to the roast that didn't need a stage. Just two critics, a hollow brand, and a punchline that wrote itself.